Have you ever felt paralyzed by fear, unsure of what to do next? Maybe it's the anxiety before speaking in public, or the feeling of dread when you need to make an important decision. We've all been there, haven't we? That moment when your heart races, your palms sweat, and your mind spirals into worst-case scenarios. Perhaps you've stood at the edge of an opportunity, knowing you want to take the leap, but that heavy weight of fear keeps you from moving forward. What happens when we let fear take control? It whispers to us, telling us to stay safe, to avoid risk, to retreat into the familiar. But in doing so, we often miss out on the very things that could change our lives. Imagine if you could step past that fear, look it in the eye and say, "I'm ready." Think about the last time you felt this way. How did you respond? Did you shrink back, or did you find the courage to face it? When I reflect on my own moments of fear, I realize it's not the fear itself that holds me back, but my reaction to it. The question is, how can we begin to break free? In Buddhism, we learn that suffering is not something that happens to us from the outside. It's not the situation itself, but our reaction to it that causes us pain. When we feel disrespected or hurt, we often think the source of the pain is the other person or the circumstances. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself why you feel hurt when someone disrespects you? Is it truly their words or actions that cause the pain? Or is it the attachment you have to your own image of how things should be? Think about it for a moment. When someone criticizes us, we often react with anger or sadness because we are attached to the idea of being respected or loved. But when we let go of that attachment, we can see things for what they are, not as a threat to our ego, but simply as a passing moment. Buddhism teaches us that peace comes from within, through the practice of letting go. The more we hold on to our desires, our expectations, and our fears, the more we suffer. But when we release that grip, when we stop resisting life as it is, we find a profound sense of inner freedom. I remember the times when I felt deeply hurt, and each time I looked inward, I found that the pain wasn't truly caused by the other person, but by my own attachment to how I wanted things to be. When I let go of that attachment, the suffering faded away. Perhaps this is the key to true peace, not in changing the world around us, but in changing how we respond to it. There's a story about a Zen master named Ryokan that has always stayed with me. Ryokan lived in a small hut at the edge of a village, known for his deep wisdom and serene presence. One winter, as he was walking near the village, a young woman came running to him, her face filled with desperation. She had just lost her beloved child to illness, and she was overwhelmed with grief. She asked Ryokan, "Master, how can I ever live with this pain? How can I bear such a loss?" Ryokan, without saying a word, gently placed his hand on her shoulder, leading her to a quiet place by the river. He told her to sit down and watch the water. "Do you see how the water flows? Even when the rocks try to block it, the water doesn't stop. It just keeps moving." For hours they sat there in silence, watching the river flow. The woman, in her grief, began to understand. She realized that just like the water, she had to allow her grief to flow through her, not to hold on to it, not to resist it, but to let it pass. The pain would never disappear entirely, but by accepting it, by letting it flow, she could find peace. What Ryokan taught her wasn't to ignore the pain or pretend it didn't exist. He showed her that the true wisdom in life is to embrace our emotions, even our pain, without clinging to them. He himself had experienced great loss in his life, loss of loved ones, loss of possessions, but he had learned to let go. This story reminds me of our own struggles, doesn't it? When we face hardship, our first instinct is often to fight against the pain, to try and escape it. But true peace comes when we allow ourselves to feel the pain, to let it wash over us without letting it define who we are. It's not the pain that hurts the most, but our resistance to it. The lesson in Ryokan's story is simple, yet it carries a profound truth that we can all apply to our lives. It is not the circumstances around us that define our peace, but how we choose to respond to them. We all face moments of pain, loss, and difficulty. Life has a way of throwing challenges at us that can feel unbearable. But the real question is, how do we react to those moments? Do we let them control us, or do we find a way to move through them? When the woman in the story chose to accept her grief and allow it to flow, she wasn't just accepting the loss of her child. She was accepting that life is full of impermanence and that holding on to pain only keeps it alive. It is our resistance to pain, our unwillingness to let go, that creates suffering. I've noticed in my own life that the times I felt the most suffering weren't necessarily when things went wrong, but when I resisted what was happening. When I tried to force the world to conform to my expectations, the pain was multiplied. But when I allowed myself to sit with the discomfort, to acknowledge the pain without judgment, that's when peace began to emerge. This is not just a theory, it is a truth that we can apply right now. When we stop fighting against what life brings and instead accept it, we begin to unlock a quiet strength within us. It's not about avoiding pain or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about realizing that pain, like everything else, is temporary. And by accepting it, we free ourselves to move forward with a deeper sense of peace. I want to share something simple with you, something that can truly change the way you see fear and how you respond to it. If you want to change, start with your thoughts. It's not about forcing yourself to feel brave in every situation, but about recognizing that fear doesn't control you unless you let it. It's okay to feel afraid. It's part of being human. But the power lies in how you choose to relate to that fear. When I was younger, I used to be terrified of failing. Every small setback felt like the end of the world. I let that fear dictate so much of my life, how I spoke, what I did, who I was. But over time, I started to realize something important. When I let go of the need to be perfect, when I stopped trying to control every outcome, fear lost its grip on me. I realized that I didn't need to be fearless to succeed. I just needed to face my fear step by step. You have that same power. You don't need to wait for the fear to disappear before you act. Start by acknowledging it. Name it. Say to yourself, yes, I feel afraid, but I am going to move forward anyway. That small shift can change everything. And remember, this doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and that's okay. Every little step you take, no matter how small, is a victory. Believe in your ability to change, and know that with each moment you face fear, you grow stronger. You don't need to let fear rule your life. You have the power to choose your path, and that, my friend, is where your true strength lies. If you want to start shifting your relationship with fear and anxiety, there are simple practices you can begin right away. One of the most powerful tools I've found is meditation. Now, I know it might sound intimidating if you've never done it before, but trust me, it's not about being perfect. It's about starting where you are. Begin with just 5 minutes every morning. Sit in a quiet place, close your eyes, and focus on your breath. Breathe in deeply, hold for a moment, then exhale slowly. Don't worry if your mind starts to wander. This is completely normal. Just gently bring your focus back to your breath each time. As you practice this, you'll begin to notice a shift. At first, it may feel challenging, but over time, you'll notice that your mind becomes quieter, calmer. This space of stillness is where you can begin to find clarity, especially in moments of fear. Instead of reacting to situations out of panic or anxiety, you'll be able to step back and respond with a clearer, more centered mind. Remember, this is a process. Don't be hard on yourself if your mind races or if you miss a day. The key is consistency, not perfection. By creating this daily habit, you're training your mind to handle fear and stress with greater ease. You'll begin to see that you don't have to fight fear. You can sit with it, observe it, and let it pass without letting it control you. So, give it a try. Start small. Be patient with yourself, and notice how these few minutes each day can transform your mindset. So what do you think about how you face situations where you feel disrespected? Have you ever tried applying the principles we talked about today? Letting go of resistance and accepting your emotions rather than fighting them. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How has fear or anxiety shown up in your life? And how did you respond? Did you find moments where simply acknowledging those feelings helped you move through them? I invite you to share your reflections in the comments below. Let's create a space where we can all learn from each other's experiences. You're not alone in this journey, and I believe we can all grow together. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe to MindPath for more insights. Stay tuned for our next video where we'll explore more ways to nurture inner peace and wisdom. Keep walking your path with mindfulness and courage. See you soon.